So this is where we got to the last time that we were working on this. We have got our bodice made and our front band attached, our ties attached, and we've got our nice little child's bodice there. So now we come into the skirt. Now there's two ways to do the skirt. We can do it as two separate skirts, and we attach the lining piece. Here you see I've got the lining piece. So we can attach the lining piece to the lining of the bodice, and we can attach the outer skirt. Here I've got mine in my strawberry fabric, to the outer part of the bodice to match the fabrics up. I feel by doing that, we've got to gather all of this fabric onto that tiny little bodice. So if we're gathering this and then we're gathering the lining, well, they're not going to sit together and it's going to create more bulk. So I prefer to do it this way. The pattern may tell you differently, but like I say, this is the way that I prefer to do it. So I have stitched my side seams, you can see. I've stitched my side seams and my centre back seam up to the notch that we cut. Where is it? There it is. There's the notch that we cut. I didn't cut it in the back, in the lining. So we've stitched it up to the notch because that's where our zip is going to come down to. So we've then got all of that zip for the bodice. We don't need the zip yet. So we've stitched our side seams, we've stitched our centre back seam, and now we're going to put these two pieces together. So we're going to put them together with the seams together. So effectively wrong sides matching, because then we're going to have the lining with no seam showing on the outside, and we're going to have the skirt with no seam showing on the outside. So we'll just put those together now. Take your time with this. Make sure that your seams match. Make sure that your lining doesn't twist. So with that, and we want to pin it. Or you can clip it if you prefer. I use pins, it's just a habit, I suppose. So we are putting our pieces together so that our seams match. Okay. And pins so that it doesn't move, makes it easier for you. And again, the other side. Seams open and flat, and pin so that it doesn't move. So we've now got our skirt pieces matched up, pinned. Give it a bit of a shake. There we go. And just put another pin in there. So, although we've pressed our seam allowance on the back, we want it open, because this seam allowance is where we're going to attach the zip. So we're just going to put a pin in just to the side of it, just to the edge. I didn't open it to begin with because we just need to make sure that it all matched. So I'm going to pin. And now we're going to repeat the operation of the gathering stitch. Now, what you need to do with this, with gathering your skirt, because you've got lots to gather, it is best to divide your skirt into your 3 pieces. So we will run a gathering stitch along the front, and we will do the backs as 2 separate pieces. So we'll start on the back, just inside of where the seam, where the zip would be sitting, and we will go all the way to, not quite to the seam, but just to the edge of it, less than 1/4 of an inch, because we want the gathers to be even all the way around. And we do this exactly the same as we've done for the front band and the tie front. So we will match the side of our presser foot to the edge of our fabric, and we will stitch a gathering stitch along here, and then we will stitch a gathering stitch about 1/2 an inch, just over 1/4 of an inch, the width of your gathering foot effectively, so that we will then attach the skirt to our bodice, the skirt and the lining, in between these 2 gathering tram lines. Okay, I'm going to do that now. Okay, so I've now run my tacking thread all the way along my skirt pieces, and we want the top 2 threads. Okay, we want those separate to the other threads. There we go. If you go a little bit too far, I've gone a little bit too far to the seam, you can just undo 1 or 2 stitches so that you've got just that little bit of a gap there. But keep your pin in, because we're going to use the pins for securing our fabric. So now what we need to do is we need to get our bodice, and if you haven't done already, you need to pin your front band out of the way, just so that we don't get it caught up in our skirt. Now, I have been made aware that the pattern tells you to fold the band in half, the way that you've done your ties, and to catch it in at this bottom edge. Well, yeah, I don't, clearly you can see I don't do it that way, and I don't often now look at the pattern pieces. So if you followed the pattern, if you followed the pattern instructions, then that's fine. If you followed me, this is what you would be doing. I don't see the point of fastening in my front band to the bottom of the bodice when my tie ends are going to be loose, and it's supposed to give the impression of it being a tie all the way around. But there we go. It's personal choice. This is the way that I'm doing it. Now, what we need to do is we need to attach our skirt to our bodice. So we are going to attach, in my case, strawberry fabric to strawberry fabric. Okay, so we want right sides together, and then we come to the seam, and we need to attach the seam. Keep your tie ends out of the way. Keep your tie ends down inside your skirt. Okay, so we now want these threads, one on either side, and take the pin out. Now we need to match up our seam, so we match it up exactly there, and we pin through both layers of the skirt. If I'm not careful, I'm going to pin through my thumb, and our bodice. There we go. So all of this fabric here now is going to be gathered up into the bodice fabric. So we're going to carry on, and we're going to match up our next seam stitches there, and get our threads out of the way. Make sure that our threads are all on the right side. See, I've got a bit of a tangle there. Sort it out so they're nice and tidy. Okay. Bit of precision here will make it easier when you come to stitch it all together. So, put our bodice, side seam matching our side seam on our skirt and pin it in place. And the last little bit that we will match our centre back of the bodice with the centre back of the skirt. There we go. And we put a pin in. So when we've got all of that, it looks like an unholy mess at the moment, doesn't it? But right, so as I was saying, yes, we've got an unholy mess here because we've got all this fabric to gather into our bodice. So what do? Well, we take our two threads that we've got there. Okay. And we do the same as we did for the front band and the tie ends. So we're going to gently pull our threads together, and we're going to move our pleating along the length of the fabric that we've got to gather into the bodice. When we think we're about there, we can stop, and these two threads we can now wind in a figure of 8 around our pin. That just secures them, keeps them tidy, keeps them out of the way. And now we're going to do it from the opposite side. So we're going to pull our two threads and we're going to move our gathering along. Can you see that? And then stop and check. Right, well, we need a little bit more gather. So once we've got it the right width to fit our skirt, we need a little bit more. Okay, check. Offer it up properly. Yeah, I think we're about there. So we're going to wind this in a figure of 8, if I can, there we go, around our pin. Okay, and then because we've secured it at each end, we are now going to ease our gathering so that it's evenly distributed along our skirt. Can you see that? Okay, so we're about even there. Let's look a bit more at this end. Take your time with this. This is what makes the difference between a really professionally finished garment and a dog's dinner. So pin it. I'm pinning between excuse me, between the tacking lines because this is our stitching line. So we want to know that what we've gathered is actually going to be correct. So we do that and we pin it. And you see how that's nicely evenly gathered there? Okay. Now we do the same with our front skirt piece. Okay. Now, you can if you want. You don't have to, and it doesn't say it in the pattern. You've got a faint crease at the centre front there, and you've got a faint crease at the centre front of your skirt. You can, if you want, pin it so that you know you've got this amount of skirt to gather into that amount of bodice, and likewise that into that bodice, and then you know it gives you a little bit more guidance as to how much you've got to pull it up. It's very gathered, this skirt, so I'm going to do the same again. We are going to take our 2 threads and we are going to gently pull them together. Make sure you pull them together because that gives you a better gather, makes it so much easier. So pull the threads and ease the gathers along to the centre front. Okay, you see this? You want your gathers eased along to the centre front because we don't want the centre front to be flat. Check when you think you've got it to just about the right width. I think we're just about there. So I'm going to fasten this off again around my pin, and I will do the same as with the back, and I'm just going to ease my gathers so that they are even. Make sure we've not got a big lump at the centre front, or that we've got a big gap like this missing at the centre front. We want it nice and even. Like I say, take your time. This is what's going to give you the really nice, pretty finish. Okay. Now, if you have previously gathered something and you've only run one gathering stitch, you find that it doesn't sit well. You can quite easily get this bit caught into where you're stitching. By running 2 threads, that means that you have got a flat area here in between your threads to stitch along. Okay, so where was I? We're going to carry on gathering this skirt the same as we've done the rest. So pull your threads, ease your gathers along. And when you think you're about right, need a bit more. Not too far off now. There we go. Fasten your threads round your pin. There we go. And move your gathering, ease it along so that it's nice and even. Take your time. Double check, make sure that it's going to fit. And you see there where it's kind of a little bit flat, it's just not quite. There we go. Right. Move it along, make it nice and even. There we go. And pin it in place. And you're doing the same with your last little bit of bodice. I'm not going to record that. You know what you're doing by now. Gather it all, pin it in place. Make sure your skirt matches where your bodice is. And I'll come back when we do the sewing together. We've got all of that pinned together now. So we now want to stitch it together. So bring your machine in, and we are stitching with the skirt on the top, and we are still going to be doing 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so we take our pin out that's got the thread wrapped around it, and we pull our threads so that you've got one going one side of the needle and one going the other side of the needle. That way you don't run the risk of running through your thread. So 5/8 of an inch, as we've done before. Stopping to take your pins out. Make sure everything is out of the way, that you are only stitching your bodice out of fabric and you're not catching in your lining fabric. Okay. When we get to our next pin, we're going to stop and we're going to do exactly the same as we've done with the first one. So we're going to just pause and take the pin out, and then we are going to make sure that our threads go to the top and the bottom. Now here as well, you have to make sure that you've not got your front band caught up. Make sure it's right out of the way, that you're not going to catch it up. Carry on stitching. So you've got your front band and you've got your tie ends that you've got to think about. Where are they? They're sandwiched in the middle here, but are they out of the way? So just check. Make sure that you can feel the edge of it. It's out of the way. Of course, if you've done it the way that the pattern tells you and you are stitching your front band into your skirt, then you will have pinned through that as well as your bodice, outer fabric and your skirt. So we go all the way along, removing pins as we go. Don't forget the one right at the centre front there. We take that out too. So now we're over halfway round. I'm going to finish off and come back to you and show you what it looks like. Okay, so now that we've stitched all the way round, we're going to take out these tacking threads. Now the easiest way to do that is to snip off these ends, and then you want to pull your other thread out and that one out, and then you will find on the other side you've got your loose thread there, so just pull that out. This has got a loop there, so just pull that out. So if you cut your thread shorter at the end, yeah, and then pull them one at a time from the opposite end, it should, because we've kept the threads out of the way of our stitching, it should come apart quite easily. And then just pick up the loop from the under thread and pull that out. There we go. So I'll cut those. I do have a bin down here. It's not everything going onto the floor. And pull the threads out. There we go. And get the loops. So there we are. Oh, this has got stuck. Let's look at that. And this one. There we go. And then turn your dress the right way around. Let's move that out of the way. You turn your dress the right way around and take that pin off. There is your little girl's dress, all nicely gathered into the bodice. Now, where was that piece that got stuck? Was it this side? I don't know. Was it that side? What was it? Oh, maybe I got it all out. And you see, our front band is completely loose and our ties are completely separate. So then we can now straighten up the back seam-ish. There we go. Oh, big fly. And there is our, I'm not tying it in a bow, child's dress. Let's see. There we go. So, yeah, quite pretty. So our next thing to do now will be the zip. So the pattern told us we needed a 12-inch zip. So I hope you've all got your 12-inch zips. And I will show you how to do our next bit.